Everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Impulso Podcast. So I'm Sabrina, and today I'll be hosting the episode together with Jangan. And joining us today, we have Jon Russell and Aulia Masna. So since it's you guys' first time on the podcast, could you please introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Hey guys, I'm John. I used to be a tech journalist for about 10 years, TechCrunch and The Can. And these days, what am I doing? It's a complicated, but one of the things I'm doing is a newsletter called Asia Tech Review, and I work with a bunch of other companies too.
Hey,
Aulia?
I'm Aulia. Like John, yeah, hi. Um, like John, I used to be a tech journalist for about 10 years. I was with E47 and Daily Social. Um, and also I was with Macworld for a while. These days, I'm mostly a communications consultant. Well, John asked me to join him at ATR. So here we are.
Thank you for joining us today. So on today's episode, we're going to discuss our thoughts on the TikTok Go-To deal, as well as how this reflects on the tech and digital economy in Southeast Asia in general. Okay, so before we begin our discussion, I'll just set a little bit of context for the listeners who might not know about this. So recently, Indonesia's largest tech platform, GoTo, struck a deal with TikTok Shop. And under the deal, Tokopedia, which is the e-commerce arm of GoTo, will actually merge with TikTok Shop Indonesia to create an enlarged entity. And with this enlarged entity, the shopping feature within the TikTok app is now owned and operated by this enlarged entity, which means that the conversion still happens on the TikTok app. So, of course, there are many interesting implications to not just GoTo and TikTok, but the other players in the e-commerce system as well, like the merchants and competitors. And if you guys are interested, you can check out our article or podcast on the winners and losers of the TikTok Go-To deal, which would be linked in the show notes below. And of course, John and Aulia, you guys also published an article in Asia Tech Review on TikTok Shop's suspension was supposed to help small shop owners in Indonesia. Its Tokopedia takeover won't change a thing. So given that you guys have been observing how things have been progressing on the ground, maybe you guys can share with us a little bit more about your thoughts on this situation.
Okay. Well, since it's happening in my backyard, I guess I should be the one talking about it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so um, TikTok Shop has been around in Indonesia for about a year. Well, it's been operational for a while actually. I forgot when exactly this. I think they started in 2021. It was I think we had the first TikTok Shop in the world, if I'm not mistaken. And then it picked up, it picked up traction really, really quickly. And a lot of the existing players like Shopee, Tokopedia, Bukalapak, I think they were, I guess terrified would be appropriate word to say. They were quite, terrified of this behemoth that's coming from ByteDance, right? So, in sometime early this year, um, TikTok Shop started to hire a bunch of influencers. They got them to try and sell stuff on their platform, right? To get more traction on TikTok Shop going because it was already basically snowballing, and a lot of the sellers on other platforms were losing out. So when these influencers, these are not not just like Instagram influencers. These are like celebrities, movie singers, actors. They they were selling stuff on TikTok Shop and they were making a lot of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, right? Um, and a lot of people, so when that happened, all these sellers on traditional markets, on actual shops, they started complaining about losing their customers, and the voices kept going louder and louder, and it became um, it came to a point where these celebrities selling so much stuff on TikTok Shop were compared to, or rather, were seen as taking over the market from the traditional sellers, right? And because these are small business owners, these are like mom and pop shops. they caught the attention and they caught the sympathy of the politicians and all the way to the president. So they thought, okay, we got to do something to stem this. We got to do something to help these small time sellers. So they quickly went into action, got together and held so many cabinet meetings. They spoke to current e-commerce players. They spoke to a representative of the sellers, and they ultimately decided to block TikTok Shop and told TikTok in September to stop operating by, I think it was early October. I forgot the date exactly. I think it was the first week of October when they were told to shut down. So at the beginning, they thought it was a victory for the sellers because finally the government is doing something. But what's actually happening is behind the scenes, a lot of there were a lot of lobbying. All these bigger platforms, or rather all the competitors to TikTok Shop, to figure out what can they do to benefit them instead, right? So, long story short, Tokopedia ended up being the winner, if you can say that, because between October and early December, TikTok talked to all of these players. They talked to Bukalapak, they talked to Tokopedia, they talked to even Shopee and everyone else. They wanted to know what they can do to keep TikTok Shop open or to reopen TikTok Shop in Indonesia, because it's I mean, TikTok Shop is a global program. They're launching it, or they've already launched it in a lot of places around the world. The biggest launch in the US was also equally controversial, but for slightly different reasons. They are slow. They are overtaking Amazon over in the US, right? So they're not playing around, these guys. So over here, they spoke to all these, all the other competitors. They wanted to know what they can do about it, what they can do to return TikTok Shop back to Indonesia, and we ended up with the takeover, and that in itself, I guess it's a win for TikTok, a win for Tokopedia, because GoTo had been struggling to profitability. Neither Tokopedia and Gojek, the two companies under GoTo, were on the way to profitability in any form. Nobody saw any path to profitability for either of them. And when the opportunity came for GoTo to, I guess, let go Tokopedia, whether it was in full or in part, they took a chance. Before they let go Tokopedia, they already let go the entertainment division. They used to have a company called Loket, which is a ticketing platform. They recently jettisoned Loket to its own company, and they also let go their entire entertainment division that used to be under Gojek itself. So basically, the Gojek entertainment section was let go and given. I guess they were given to Loket to manage. So now Loket manages everything that Gojek Entertainment and Lifestyle used to handle as a separate company. And now they've also jettisoned Tokopedia. Well, much of Tokopedia anyway, 75% of it. So the whole thing works out really well for the GoTo group, which is really just Gojek right now because there's nothing else underneath that, right?
So there's also this GoTo Financial, right? Which I think includes payment and a bunch of services. I don't know how the people in Indonesia feel about it, but in my opinion, Bank Jago has been doing exceptionally well. But the payment part, the rest, I'm not so sure. I mean, how's the sentiment on the ground about this? The financial part of GoTo.
Yeah, so the financial part of GoTo. Actually, I forgot about that one. The GoPay and Bank Jago, the two big financial arms of GoTo Financial. The bank, I would say the bank is, it doesn't have a very high profile. Not a lot of people seem to be jumping on that bank, the Bank Jago bandwagon. But GoPay is widely used, right? It's used by, there are far more GoPay users than there are banking customers. Right. and they are tying GoPay along with Bank Jago in a lot of respects. So that's sort of intertwined in a way. People still use GoPay to pay for a lot of stuff, especially now that across Indonesia, it doesn't matter what bank or what financial institution or what digital wallet you have, you can pay using the same QR code. They used to be separate, right? Basically, at every merchant, you would have multiple QR codes displayed. Now they only have one or two. Now that everything is in terms of, I guess, in terms of digital payment, QR specifically, they're all funneled through one system, so it's beneficial for GoPay. People don't need to jump off to different platform to use that. I guess what they what they compete on these days are promos, cashbacks, and stuff like that. But
promos.
People still enthusiastic. Yeah, people still enthusiastically use GoPay, right? So that's not a problem for them. And in fact, that's probably the only way for the entire group to be profitable. But there's still, currently there's still no way for the Gojek group to be profitable in itself, from the rides, from food. The food may be, food and delivery, they may see some path, but as a group, it's almost impossible. There's just too much cost associated with it. So by jettisoning all these, non-core businesses, it's a way for GoTo to, eventually become profitable. But it's not. Right now it's not fully clear yet. But it's what's clear is it is a way to get there. But we still don't know how long it's going to take, right? And for TikTok, this is a win because they are now back. It's business as usual for TikTok Shop in Indonesia now. As if nothing changed from September.
So it has already gone back, right? People can already buy things on TikTok Shop now. Yeah. So how does it work? Because lots of people, I think are outside Indonesia, they're reading the headlines, they know sort of what deal is being struck, and of course there's lots of analysis going in saying that what are the pros and cons. I think from business and from investment point of view, people get I think by now pretty good idea about what are winners, etc. But exactly how that's going to be carried out? Is it being carried out? Is the shopping back live again? And what kind of shape does it take? So this is probably something interesting.
Okay, so right now, it's exactly what it used to look like. There's a shopping tab inside TikTok. Before it was just black and I think orange. But now it's all green because it's run by Tokopedia. So when you open the shopping tab on TikTok, there's a pop-up that says TikTok shop operated by Tokopedia, and it's all in green because Tokopedia's color is green. It's got both Tokopedia and TikTok branding on it. People buy stuff there, do it the same way they do on Tokopedia. But difference is at this moment, you don't have to link your Tokopedia account to your TikTok account. You don't have to. You can if you want, but you don't have
to. So basically, it's TikTok Shop, but with the skin of Tokopedia on it. You function exactly the same.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's exactly the same. Nice. And there is way more live shopping, on the app than ever before. Like previously, for example, maybe before September, before they were shut down, you see one every 4 or 5, or maybe one every 10 swipes. Now you see one every 2 or 3.
Yeah,
you see live shopping every 2 or 3. I'm guessing because all the contract that had to be suspended during TikTok Shop's shutdown, now they're ramping that up, right? All these, so there's a few, I guess, live shopping agencies that provide these services for the vendors, for the merchants. Now they're ramping up all of the, I guess, leftover contract, I guess, and it's just a flood of live shopping, content on TikTok right now.
I think first is Double 12, right? So obviously it's a shopping festival.
Oh yeah.
And And second,
Yeah,
what I do know is that there are lots of sellers, MCNs who prepared lots of inventory for the shopping festivals, and obviously they lost about 2.5 months, which they couldn't sell anything, right?
yeah.
Mm. Hey,
That's why the
John.
festival is a week long.
John, where are you now?
London, yeah.
Okay, sounds cold already.
Far away from TikTok, Wikipedia, just for the Christmas break. So yeah.
Yeah, fair. Do you use TikTok at all?
You think I'm not one of their target audience? I'm not, right? So I'm not actually. Well, my daughter does, and my son, they're both in the teens. So, I think I begun to use it more because I think it's very clearly becoming like a huge, channel for like influencers and for social media. But yeah, I mean, I haven't bought anything from TikTok Shop yet. But I mean, clearly this deal is. I mean, it's such a strange deal to happen because, I mean, this year's been so quiet, right? There's so few deals happening. There's so few exits, and then this sort of huge deal comes over. And I mean, from a very cynical point of view, outside of Indonesia, obviously, I'm not living there, so it kind of looks like everyone's won, right? The Indonesian government's won because the huge IPO that they sort of had previously hasn't gone so great, right? The go-to share price hasn't really ever done well. That kind of narrative that they had when they launched it, which is these are the two biggest companies we've got in our country come together for a huge IPO. That narrative hasn't worked, right? And if you're going to think about what's the new narrative that we can get that would beat that, you'd probably say someone like TikTok coming in and buying a piece of that company. That's exactly what has taken place, right?
I kind of like the way that this deal struck, right? Because I mean, they will still take a Tokopedia name. So on the surface, that I think go to giving up the control of Tokopedia, but the name lives on, and of course, this is structured as I mean, at least on the surface, a win for them, and they traded off as earlier you said, I mean, they jettisoned a money losing asset for some dividend or revenue sharing, and for an entity that's going to be managed by TikTok, which I think is quite capable. So overall, I think I think it's good. One question for both of you, and obviously you have been observing Southeast Asia tech for a long time, and as John just mentioned, this year has been quiet, right? I mean, so not many deals happening, and probably not many people are actually actively watching what's happening in tech. If you look back in the history and we see how things have evolved to what we see today, I mean, of course, large companies IPO'd and stock price not doing well, and now there's this new player coming in, disrupting things, and there's new deals being made. I don't know. I mean, personally, how do you feel? I mean, after having been observing the sector for like more than a decade. Tough question, loaded question.
I guess, like John said, for it's been a very difficult year for tech in Indonesia. It's been difficult, in most of the places around the world, but also in Indonesia because we've had a lot of layoffs. We had multiple rounds of layoffs. We've had companies shutting down, and again, obviously, go to spinning off different parts of the companies. This was a deal that the government was, in a way, I guess, if they didn't want to be actively, seen as being involved in, to close the year with something positive, and hopefully seeing something more positive next year after the election, because we're having our we're having our general election in February, right? So for the government to pull this off months before the election, they want to be seen as sort of a savior for for the smaller players. But as we noted in our article, and also apparently the one of the biggest current affair magazines in the country, Tempo, just the other day released a very similar analysis. They also think that this deal isn't, at least in its current form, isn't going to do anything to help the small merchants, unless they all jump off, unless they all jump to TikTok Shop, to Tokopedia. They're not gonna see any benefit out of it. The shops are still going to be empty. People are still not going to go to the commercial districts. It's just gonna be abandoned eventually. But having said that, the government did say that despite this deal, it is still violating the law. This deal is still, technically it's still illegal, because TikTok is not supposed to. When they shut down TikTok in September, they also passed a law that makes it an offense to run an e-commerce platform inside a social media app, or vice versa. Right? So social media and social commerce, or social media and commerce in general, have to be completely separate. This deal hasn't done that. This deal only basically puts us back to the status quo, right? But what they're having acknowledged that, they did say that because this deal will not actually close until February, they are giving the two companies that amount of time to figure out what they can do to abide by the law. And this is basically a trial period, right? The trade minister said this is a trial period. We will see what Tokopedia and TikTok will do with regards to the law that they passed in September. Because Tokopedia and TikTok Shop can, I guess, advertise or promote all these items in the app, but the actual transaction cannot happen inside the app. It has to be bumped off to a separate app, presumably the Tokopedia app itself, right? So I don't know. We may still see. I mean, this is not the end of the story, obviously. We have to see by February or March what's happening with TikTok Shop and how they're going to respond to that. Because if they don't change this, if they don't spin it off, the government might come down on them and say, okay, you haven't actually shown any good faith with regards to the law, and you have to do something about it. You have to separate Tokopedia from TikTok Shop. You can't have that inside the app, right? So I don't know.
So basically, you're saying that
it's insane, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's crazy, right? The idea of like, oh, we need to support, MSMEs, but actually now the fact that someone else is coming in and buying our big piece of our local champion that's not doing well, we'll just forget about that for a bit. Like that's a very cynical take, right? Which is like, oh, it's okay now that someone's pumped $1 billion or whatever it is into this business, and actually they're going to give them a piece of the profit that they make, right? It seemed very opportunistic, and like Aulia said, like essentially the government has made this deal happen, right? Because they hadn't said anything before, and they then focus on TikTok Shop. They're not the only company that's doing this, right? They're the biggest and the most the most popular, but they're not the only one. So it does kind of reek of like self-interest here, right? Like the fact that someone's coming in and pumping money into the struggling company means, well, you know what, actually that's okay. But I don't think you can do anything to fix this, right? I think it's not just Indonesia, it's any country, any city that had like a thriving offline kind of commercial part, right? I mean, so many companies have come in and they've just beaten them, right? And I guess the biggest issue is always like where are those goods coming from? And I think most of them come from China anyway. I think the offline goods that are being sold come from China anyway. But it's just, is there a way that you can protect those sellers? And so I guess the interesting part is probably the fact that, I mean, even if you read the article, the announcement that GoTo made, they mention MSMEs so much, right? It's crazy. Like they're obviously, that's the big focus, is we're trying to, these offline sellers, we're trying to appease them and help them to sell. But I just can't see that there's anything you can do at this point to fix that, right? And I mean, and not just in Indonesia, but any other country too.
I have some thoughts on that actually. So here's my, I mean, you mentioned the word cynical, but view. Yeah, it's I would think that TikTok. I mean, of course, the transitioning from some of the offline sort of the tangible brick and mortar businesses into e-commerce this is happening globally, and depending on the infrastructure, depending on the maturity of many things, right? Payment ecosystem. I mean, consumer willingness, supply of goods, etc. In different countries, this happens at different speed, and will probably eventually reach a different sort of equilibrium maturity point. And if you look at the last few years, Shopee and Tokopedia, they have sort of tapped into this wagon, and the growth has stopped a little bit post the pandemic. But then TikTok Shop came in and leveraging its 125 monthly active users and 70 million daily active users in Indonesia, and of course that's insane amount of like attention that people have, and the insane amount of attention that you can monetize through selling people things. So very quickly, if you leave them to run things this way, I mean, lots of people's shopping attention will be online, and that's converting much faster compared to the Shopee and others could do. So obviously, from a government point of view, they're concerned, right? If somebody who has so much power, controls so much people's sort of time and attention, and at the same time, that control has been leveraged to alter the form of commerce in a particular country. So that's like a nuclear weapon they're having, and how you are using it. I do think that. I don't know, Aulia, correct me if I'm wrong. I do think the government doesn't have an inherent problem about TikTok per se, but probably before the ban, they didn't have a proper communication channel with TikTok Shop. So that's why you mentioned that when the ban happened, TikTok Shop tried to talk to everyone, and they probably didn't have that much communication with the different stakeholders. I'm under the impression that before the ban was enacted, they were probably not talking effectively to the government, if they were talking at all.
So before the ban, TikTok had actually been very active in this country. They have set up their own office. The office is set up as a representative office of TikTok, but not as an e-commerce operator, right? Because that's a different license. And in fact, a few months ago, TikTok had just held a creator conference and also an economic conference. They invited so many people from different parts of the world too, from all over Asia. I think they said that, I can't remember if it was July or August, but I remember they said they're planning to invest about $10 to $15 billion into the company. Into the country, right? And at that time, there were no signs of well, maybe not no, but they were still confident that they would be able to continue running TikTok Shop and everything else they're doing here. So with that 10 to 15 billion, I don't exactly remember how much they pledged to invest, but yeah, between 10 to 15 billion dollars, that's a lot of money, right? That's a lot of money that none of the other e-commerce competitors or any other social media companies have pledged to spend in the country. So when Tokopedia and TikTok got together, that basically continued. But it resumed that commitment, because without TikTok Shop, it was very difficult for TikTok to maybe justify that level of investment. Now that it is picking up, the government may have also considered that, hey, these guys told us that they're investing like billions of dollars into the country. So if we stop them from doing this, we may not see that investment, right? So by basically letting Tokopedia go for below its actual market value, they're thinking maybe they're going to resume this investment, and it's going to to benefit a lot of people in the long term. But we don't know who the people will benefit from this, right? And yeah, like John said in the press release, they mentioned small businesses so many times, because it is a focus. It is the main issue which got them banned in the first place. But I'm thinking, it's not impossible, but it goes against the whole idea of having an online shop. If they end up spending money to help brick and mortar shops, right? So it kind of does make sense. I mean, they can do that as a courtesy, I guess, right? In a symbolic way, spending maybe if they spend a few $1 million, that's already a lot of money spent anyway. But it's it's not a lot when you consider they're going to spend billions of dollars in the country. When you consider that that level of investment commitment they announced a few months ago, helping the traditional vendors in a small way might go a long way in terms of getting or regaining the goodwill. But in terms of communication with the government, like I said, that they had the conference. The CEO has been here a few times. The people who run TikTok in this country, I know I've met some of them. They used to work for the government, or either they used to work for the government, or they've used to deal with the government for other in their previous roles. So it's not that they didn't have communication with the government. They did. But I don't know to what level and to what sort of communication that they have, because these are not inexperienced people. Right? These are people who have worked with the Indonesian government for a long time.
I do feel that so within ByteDance per se, right? The TikTok and TikTok Shop are actually different in a way that the TikTok Shop is e-commerce, and it's I've seen the internal reporting line. So people at TikTok Shop eventually don't report to Show, which is the CEO of TikTok, but they report to somebody in Beijing who runs whole monetization for ByteDance. So I do think that there are probably some dynamics there, right? I mean, the people running TikTok and people running TikTok Shop, they're a bit different, and then their access is different. It's a large organization. And you mentioned you met a few people. I mean, there are lots of people working for TikTok. In Indonesia, there are probably a few thousand people. So I do think there are some organizational issues at play as well.
Possibly. Like you mentioned correctly that there are different lines of reporting. The people I've met were the ones who run TikTok, not TikTok Shop, right? Because I don't know is whether TikTok Shop actually already have government relations, or were they relying on TikTok's own government relations people or PR to deal with the Indonesian government? Because what happens with a lot of these companies is they may be different, they may be different entities legally or as far as corporate structure is concerned. But for the Indonesian government, they know that, well, what they care about is the people that they've spoken to for a little while, and they would be meeting with the same people. For them, TikTok Shop is the same as TikTok, so they would meet the same people. But again, because TikTok Shop does have a different line of reporting, maybe in terms of operational stuff, there is no connection to the Indonesian government. So they would have gone through the main TikTok reps.
So it is possible when the government thinks that TikTok Shop, you are doing too much too fast, and you are doing things. I mean, maybe most of the things you do are okay, but there are things you do which impacts the real economy, impacts the society. Okay, now I'm going to talk to people I know at TikTok, and then maybe they tell me that, I don't run TikTok Shop. Then government is left confused. So who should I talk to?
Yeah, that definitely that could have happened. Yeah.
I mean, I think this situation really shows like the complexity of, expanding globally and expanding into countries like Southeast Asia, where you need to manage a lot of different stakeholders in your expansion. And I think just now Jon mentioned that 2023 was a pretty slow year for tech or investments in general, right? So, I mean, we're in the last week of 2023. So how do you guys see this trend moving forward into 2024? Do you think that it's going to pick up, or do you think it's going to be slow again?
TikTok is definitely going to do a lot of there's going to be a lot of activity around TikTok and TikTok Shop, right? They've said so much already. But in terms of investments or other movements around Indonesian tech, I'm not sure, because the focus next year will be the election and what people are going to do with the new capital city. Because by August next year, the capital city will have officially moved from Jakarta to the new city, to Nusantara in Kalimantan. There's going to be a lot of focus over there. So if these companies want to do something big, or if they have plans to, to make a lot of movements or activities in 2024, I don't, politically, it might be complicated, because a lot of the government staff, government workers, they will move to the new capital city. Depending on which presidential candidate gets elected.
Isn't that obvious?
You might say it. I mean, people might think it's obvious. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, put it this way. Right now, all the surveys are saying that Prabowo is going to win this, but it's hard to tell, to be honest, because from the first presidential debate, Anies was the winner. And all these surveys were done before the debate. And we haven't seen surveys after the debate, right? And frankly, Anies is a lot more charismatic. He's a lot more pragmatic as well. Meanwhile, the others, Prabowo and Ganjar, they all try to present themselves as Jokowi 2.0. They want to present themselves as, people running, continuing Jokowi's legacy, continuing his programs. But if Anies gets elected, there's potentially a big move. I mean, the biggest thing that he's trying to do is to cancel the capital change, to cancel the move, right? He does not want the capital to be moved from Jakarta. And if that happens, if he gets elected and he somehow manages to overturn the law that moves the capital from Jakarta to Nusantara, that's a lot of movement. That's a lot of unknown, I guess, elements that's happening in the next few years.
I have a friend, Chinese, but he has been running a mining company in Indonesia for 15 years, and since last month, he said he's taking a extended holiday until next June. I said, why are you doing this? He said, I just wait it out because I really don't know what will happen and who will be elected, and it's probably not wise for me to do anything until I know for certain who will be the people in charge and who would be and what kind of policy direction will be. Then I can decide where I will invest my time, resources, and money. So because at the moment I don't know. I said, I mean, but aren't you looking at the headlines, the news reports? And he said, I talked to every single member of staff of my on my company, and here's something which he said, which is interesting. He said, I haven't found anyone in my company, which is like a few thousand people, who doesn't support Prabowo. So then here's, but he said it doesn't mean that he will get elected. Maybe it's biased, but what I'm saying is that I don't know. I don't know how the whole country, because it's a large country with lots of different people.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. All the headlines, all the surveys, they all say Prabowo is going to win. But as your friend has, and I do as well, I'm not convinced with any of these surveys, because there's so many moving parts, so many different parts of the country, different kinds of people. So the election is happening in February, but if nobody passes 51%, we'll go to a runoff in June. Yes, that's half a year, right?
And that's why my friend is taking a leave until June.
Yeah, taking until June. Okay.
What happens if there's a result in February? He said, I'll cut short my holiday and go back to business.
So with three candidates, there's unlikely to be a result in February. We're probably going to go see a runoff in June, and then the new government will be sworn in around August. It's why I don't see a lot of people wanting to do a lot of stuff. I don't think they want to do big movements.
Well, election with more than one candidate is not something I'm entirely familiar with, but yeah.
But I mean, I think if you're looking at what TikTok's doing in this region overall, right? And I think you guys probably know better than us, right? Because you've had a bunch of stories about what they're up to. But I mean, I don't think they're doing acquisitions. I think this is opportunistic, right? This is they kind of need TikTok Shop to be big in Indonesia, because it's kind of like the example, right? It's been the blueprint market. The first one is so huge in this region. So I'm not sure that they'll do other sort of deals, but I think it's a good time to be growing your business, because like you said, there's not much money, there's plenty of layoffs, there's people you can hire. Like, I think it's a good time for them to be here. I mean, I'd be amazed if there were any other deals that are worth doing. So I don't think there's anything you can really buy that they can't, build themselves, right? And as an organization, ByteDance is always building things, right? But I mean, like, maybe there's some other market where similarly, like, there's some politics is involved, and they sort of have to do something to appease the government. I mean, Vietnam might be the only other one, perhaps, right, where there's e-commerce companies that have been there for some time, that have a position that maybe the government has, sees what happened in Indonesia and thinks there's an opportunity. But otherwise, I guess they're just going to keep building and hiring. And I mean, how many folks they have now in this region? You probably know, right? 5,000, 10?
Probably much more than that. So I think even the office here, I mean, in Singapore, they're expanding, I mean, floors. So it's, I mean, among big tech companies, they are the only company which is hiring. So I think you guys have been following the tech in the region for so many years, and now it has evolved to a stage where I think from my point of view, so TikTok is the only major tech which is hiring. And of course, you have a bit of presence of Google, a bit of presence of Meta, and Meta is probably very comfortable now because of Temu. And but then, and the regional companies, I think Grab is in a comfortable position. They have like targets. I mean, it might not be the most exciting thing that they do, but okay, I have this target, I'm hitting this target. I have this target, I'm hitting this target. GoTo seems to be in disarray, but now they've managed to as Aulia said, jettison one of the money-losing assets so that they can focus on others. Maybe they were, I don't know, sell Gojek to Grab, or maybe even TikTok.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. But
and then
one of
your
your predictions, right? Outrageous one.
No, I stopped making predictions because first I realized that obviously, I mean, we were the only ones in a region who make predictions and review predictions, and then that's I don't know, and then I think after the pandemic it became like harder and harder to predict.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of harder to predict, so Temu is one of the bigger players in e-commerce right now, right? They've launched in the US, they've launched in Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, UK, whatever, so many different countries. But I don't think they've launched here. I don't know if they've launched in Southeast Asia. Do you know?
They started in the Philippines end of August, and Malaysia mid of September. I know that they internally had to build a team for Thailand, which is, I think, where Jon usually lives, but now he's in Cold London. So, but they have not been focused on this region. I think for a number of reasons. So first is that this whole quarter is the shopping festival in North America and Europe, and they still are trying to figure out logistics for Europe, which could unlock a lot of growth for them. And of course, as you guys know, right, the basket size in Europe is probably going to be much bigger compared to Southeast Asia. Jon, you're in the UK now. I think they are doing about 400,000 parcels a day to UK now, Temu.
Yeah, I haven't seen the ads yet, but I mean, I know from like friends of mine who are here that it is very, very popular. Yeah, which is insane. And I think what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, if you're looking at regions like Southeast Asia is obviously big, and people spend, crazy amount of time on their phone, but they're not going to be buying as much, or they're not going to be buying as many big ticket items, right? So I was always curious, like, what it was about this region that made, TikTok Shop focus here first. And I guess it was a playbook, right, that they could build. Indonesia being like a huge market where, okay, it's not that much in common with, America or Europe, but maybe it's a way that they could figure out how this stuff might work, right?
I actually have a theory. I think the news that Southeast Asia is fragmented, is hard and stuff. But first, they have lots of users in Southeast Asia, and second, this is a market that the executives are relatively familiar with, and you do have lots of people who have operated in sort of Chinese affiliated or Chinese inspired e-commerce companies that they can poach or hire, like people from Shopee, people from Lazada, etc. Because I noticed that the same companies, when they go to Brazil, when they try to hire people who have existing experience,
that's true actually.
Yeah. And another thing is that of course the founder of ByteDance spends a significant amount of time in Singapore, right? So it's something that they're familiar with. But I think team will probably change the calculus, right? Because initially everybody was like trying to go to the US, but hesitating a bit, saying that US might be too difficult, Amazon's too strong. Then as it happened, right, team just went ahead and started being very aggressive in the US. And of course, that probably changed the calculus of other companies. I mean, TikTok Shop now is having a big focus in the US, and I do think that for the people running e-commerce for ByteDance, if they lose Indonesia, I don't know, never get a hard time with their bosses. But if they don't win in the US market, they'll probably lose their job. It's a very competitive organization anyway. So it's something we can continue to watch.
As far as domestic companies are concerned, I don't think they're going to do anything, right? They're, like you said, they're most likely going to just sit and wait for another year. Basically going on a holding pattern, see what's happening with the government, where the policies are going. But I don't know. I feel like maybe overseas companies might want to do something, or might maybe not make a big splash, but like put a bit of seed, see what's see what's going on. They might take a look. Yeah.
I think also, John, when you're in the UK, there's one thing, I mean, which you can probably find out in the next few weeks and tell us next year, which is, TikTok Shop launched in Indonesia and the UK at around the same time, and Indonesia has been performing and UK has not been performing. My theory is that back to what I said just now, right? They couldn't find people who actually sort of can work coherently with the organization to actually properly tackle this market. And of course, there's some theory from analysts and market saying that, it's because people in the UK are not used to like live commerce or video commerce, whatever. So probably something, I mean, I don't know, you can find out through like real people you talk to.
Yeah, I mean, I think also Amazon here is so big. I mean, there is no competition, right? And I know US, we talk about, Amazon had this lead that wasn't possible to beat, right? But you also have other players online, right? The UK is really Amazon dominated, and so many people have Prime membership too, right? Even my own parents, where I never would have thought that my mum would have Amazon Prime, but she does, right? So I think that's the kind of that's kind of hard to beat, right?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine my mum doing, being on TikTok and doing, live selling. So it's kind of a bit not really the kind of nature of folks here, right? So I think it's a much harder nut to crack, I would say. But one more thing I was going to say is actually I think this whole thing of these companies coming in, whether it's TikTok Shop or like Shein or Temu, I think one thing that's good for the region is all the logistics guys that have been here for some time that have, I mean, they've been interesting companies, but they haven't really reached the kind of highs that they were trying to reach. I think this is good for them because these companies, they need partners off the bat, right? And we've seen like Shopee and Lazada building their own kind of businesses to do that. They obviously still work with a bunch of people too, but I think it's great for these guys because they really need extra business, and as far as I can see, like they don't really get that right now. And they probably could be a bit better at what they do in some countries too. So maybe that might push them a bit. But because it feels like there's a bunch of companies that are kind of stuck where they've raised a lot of money and they haven't really got an exit, right? And maybe the numbers that they're doing aren't so great. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, having a bunch more companies coming in needing to ship things fast is probably good for their business too, right?
So I think that concludes this episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you in 2024.